Hello everybody, Raven Knight here. Year 8 Season 1 has been released, and all the cool stuff that we've been waiting for has been released as well, including the new hero skin for Warden, the Unsung Knight. If you guys haven't seen the video yet, I just did a video not too long ago where I read all 3 parts of her lore that Ubisoft has released so that you guys can get a full understanding of what her lore is. And now today, as I do with all the hero skin lore, I'm going to sit down with you guys and talk about that lore, tell you what's good, tell you what's bad, and basically give you my thoughts as a writer on how this lore panned out. So let's not waste any time and talk about the Unsung Knight. So first of all, if you guys didn't recognize the hero skin, you should. In the 2016 trailer for For Honor, that is the knight that dropped down to fight the first Viking and a samurai who showed up in Ashfeld to try to get this little bit of puddled water to live off of after the cataclysm. So this knight should look familiar, and apparently a lot of people really wanted to play as this knight or know more about her because they decided to turn her into a hero skin. And I'm not complaining. This is an excellent looking hero skin. It looks clean. This is a really awesome looking knight design. I absolutely love the way the sword looks. I love the helmet. It's a Salet helmet or Saleh helmet, however you want to pronounce it. It just looks absolutely awesome, and it really does herald back to the good old days of For Honor where everyone's armor looked a little patchy, a little worn, a little tired. I think it looks great. I think she looks absolutely awesome. But now let's talk about that lore. First of all, let's talk about the name. There is no name for this hero. She's just the Unsung Knight. And I'll go ahead and say off the bat right here, I'm not sure I like that very much. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of the idea that you didn't give her a name. Now, some might say, oh, well, you know, she's a legend. You know, her name has been lost to time. Yeah, that is true. I won't deny you that. But at the same time, we had Ramiel. How come he got a name? Oh, well, he's a mythical figure, so we can give names to mythical figures who might not have existed, but to an actual historical figure, we're not going to give her a name? I don't know. I'm not sure I totally buy into that, but it's cool. It's fine. I would have preferred a name. I would have preferred something to go off of, but she's the Unsung Knight. Okay, that's what she is. So the story goes that the Unsung Knight used to be a petty thief as a child. Like, she was this little girl wandering around, stealing from people just to live because she didn't have anything. She comes across this warden, tries to steal from him, but she's caught, and the warden, who could have killed her for what she did, instead decides to spare her and take her along with him and turn her into his squire, basically teaching her everything she has to know about being a warden, teaching her honor, discipline, fighting tactics, how to care for other people, teaching her all these things, and she is living off of it. She's consuming all this information and growing, becoming stronger, becoming the kind of knight that he would be proud of, becoming like a father figure. But then the cataclysm happens, and so now she and her mentor are having to do everything they can to help the poor and the needy, because as he taught her, the people come first. They come first before you. They come first before your needs. You will give of yourself to help these people. And so they are working very hard to help the people in a very difficult scenario where everything's going wrong for them. At one point during her journey, though, she comes back to camp to find that the 3 refugees that they have, including her mentor, are being attacked by bandits, and so she has to help save her mentor. But in the battle, her mentor falls, and she manages to fend off the bandits, but in his final moments, he bequeaths to her his sword, which is a legendary sword called Valor's Edge, and it's been passed down from warden to warden all through the histories, all through time, and wardens have basically, whoever carried this, fought for the people, fought for Ashfeld, you know, we're protecting the weak, and one day, it was believed that this sword would unite Ashfeld together, all the knights under one banner, you know, stop the infighting. And so she lays her master to rest, picks up his sword that he bequeathed to her, and then goes about her business of helping the poor and the needy and the destitute. And all in all, pretty awesome stuff. I actually really do like this lore. This is the kind of stuff I eat up. For one thing, it's good to finally see a knight-based season where the knights aren't the bad guys. Can y'all remember the last time we did that? Anytime there seemed to be a knight-based season, the knight was the bad guy, or the knights were the ones doing bad things. It's nice to finally see a knight season where the knights are actually the paragons for once. I think that's pretty cool. I love the way the hero skin looked, like I said, but I think what I also like about it is the legend behind the sword, the idea that there is this weapon that is held sacred by the knights back to their age of antiquity, that every warden who's carried it has carried along this purpose with it. I think that's pretty neat. I think that's a cool idea. I think that adds a little bit of flavor to the characterization. It also explains why her mentor wants to help the needy. I also think, though, that there were a few problems, and I think there were two major problems. The first being the fact that this is just an origin story. Now, don't get me wrong, origin stories aren't a bad thing. I'm not against origin stories. Many good stories are origin stories. But I wanted to see more. And what I mean by that is, what does she do now that she has the sword? What is her goal? And obviously your response would be, well, she goes and helps the needy. Yes, I know. But what led her to fight that samurai and Viking, right? What led her to encounter them? Has Ashfeld encountered the Vikings and samurai before that point? How did she feel meeting these new strange warriors that she's never seen before? That would have been a very interesting add-on to the lore. What was the very first interaction between knights, samurai, and Viking like in that moment? Why couldn't we see a continuation? Like, because that's the thing, that's what really irked me, because it goes into my second problem, the length. This was probably one of the shortest bits of lore we've ever seen. Part 3 being so short, I was kind of like, wait, this is it? This is all you got? Just her letting her master bequeath the sword to her and then die? I wanted to see more. What I think should have happened is you should have paced it differently. Have part 1 be about her searching for berries or for food or what have you and coming back to discover the fight going on. Have the master die in the second part and have her bury him and then help the people. Then in the third part, when she's searching for water, she discovers this pool and finds the samurai and Viking fighting for it. She doesn't recognize them, considers them invaders, and drops down to basically warn them, I'm not going to let you go any further, this is Ashfeld land, and that's what leads to the fight. Through that, you could explain what she's been doing since her master died, what the sword has meant to her, how Ashfeld has been responding to her, and how she responds to the samurai and Vikings. You could have done a lot there to really explore what she's all about, what she's looking to do, what she is aiming to achieve. Because keep in mind, one of the cool things about this story was she doesn't feel worthy. She is very much questioning whether or not she's worthy to carry Valor's Edge, whether or not she's worthy to carry on her mentor's legacy. She doesn't feel she is, so you could see how she feels by the time she meets those warriors. Is she worthy to protect Ashfeld from these threats? Maybe she rallies people around her. Maybe some knights decide to stand beside her because she has that sword. What if, now this is just a thought, what if at this point in time, because of the cataclysm, all the knights were fighting amongst each other just to get by, and when they see this new threat and they see this sword, Valor's Edge, held up to defend against that threat, the knights decide to put aside their differences and fight against the invaders, and thus the sword fulfilled its promise of bringing the knights all together. I think that would have been a very, very cool direction to take the story. And I think the problem here is not that they didn't do it, it's that they could have done it. There's ample ability. Add a part 4, Ubisoft. Just add a part 4 where that happens and you have it completed. I think the problem with this story is it needed closure. You basically have a great setup to a story here. You have a great preamble, which is fine. You need that preamble. But you know, I remember y'all talking about how, I remember the developers talking about in the Warriors Den, they were saying, you know, people think that she's crazy for helping the poor and the needy because, you know, like, why would you do that? This is every man for himself right now because of the cataclysm. Well, the thing is, we never saw that in the story. We never saw anyone mocking her or mocking her mentor for helping people. We never saw that. I would have liked to have seen that, show the difficulty, because that is something you don't see explored a whole lot. See, in today's day and age, we often like to hold up the generous person, the kind person, the helpful person. But in times like this, where it's man versus man, every man for himself, maybe people would mock her. Maybe people would make fun of her. Like, really? What do you do? Like, oh, all those berries that you just got, what are those for? Like, you're gonna eat all those? No, they're for the refugees I've taken in. Oh, what? Look, don't waste it on that. If you're not gonna eat them yourself, give them to us. You know, we need them too. You know, you could have a lot of that in here. And I know, it's a game, it's a multiplayer live service game. Most people don't care about this stuff, but good lore costs the same as bad lore. And I'm not even saying this is bad lore, it's incomplete lore. I feel like this was rushed. I don't know why, I just feel like this was a little rushed. It's not bad, it just needs some more to make it complete. Add her encountering the Viking and the samurai. Add her experiences after she got the sword. Add how people treated her while she had the sword and what all of Ashfeld's going through. Talk about some of the refugees. Maybe she has certain relationships with some of the refugees. Maybe some of those kids that were in the refugees see her as a mother figure or as some kind of goddess. Like, think about, like, you know, in characters like Warhammer 40k, the first thing I think of is someone like the living Saint Celestine, you know, this figure that when people even hear her name, they just think about how hope has arrived. What if that's the way Ashfeld starts to see her? When she shows up on the scene, hope has arrived. When you see that sword, hope has arrived. You know, that's the whole idea. If you are hope in the face of desolation and destruction, that should mean something. And I feel like that's what this character is really missing. In terms of design, she's awesome. And in terms of setup and origin, she's great. I just think that the story needed a little more to complete it. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is bad. I want to make that very, very clear. I don't think this is bad lore in the sense that, oh, this is so bad, this doesn't make any sense. Everything that was written makes perfect sense. Again, the problem here is the story was not completed. I think that's the issue. You could have done more with what you had. So, my final verdict on the Unsung Knight, as it is right now, is excellent. I like the lore, it just needs more to it. But here's the part that I find funny, and this is me separating myself from what is canon to what is just my theory, okay? I couldn't help but notice that the Unsung Knight seems, in lore, very, very similar to the lore behind my own warden, Ruth. So I've been moving around this hashtag for a little while, ever since hearing about her between my community, called hashtag the Unsung Ruth or hashtag Unsung Ruth, because if she don't have a name, I'm gonna call her Ruth. And you know what? You know what'd be kind of cool? What if, and again, this is me here, not canon, this is not Ubisoft, what if you had it where she is not Ruth's descendant, but her predecessor? What if it's like the sword that Ruth got from Stephen got from his mentor, and Stephen got from his, and that mentor got from his, all the way down the line until you get back to the Unsung Knight, and maybe people have just forgotten. Because remember, Stephen did the same thing. In fact, I am stunned how similar the lore is here. Think about the difference here. So Ruth's lore, if you don't remember her lore, go watch the video on her, but her lore involved Ruth, who was a daughter of Valkenheim, being rescued by a warden named Stephen, who took her under his wing, raised her, and trained her to become a warden herself. He eventually dies and passes on his sword to her. She is struggling with the idea that she's not worthy to carry on Stephen's legacy and become a warden as good and as valorous and as strong as him. She breaks away from several of the groups of wardens and knights in Ashfeld because she feels like they're not doing enough to help the people, and she starts to become a wandering warden who helps whoever is in need of helping, and she believes very firmly in upholding the values and oaths of chivalry and knighthood. Does this not sound incredibly familiar? Now, I'm not going to be so bold as to say that the Ubisoft development team took Ruth and just said, do that. But I do think deep down in my soul that some inspiration might have come from there. Or maybe they were giving an homage to Ruth. Maybe they were just saying, here's a little homage to Ruth. And if that's true, and you're free to correct me, if you're a developer at Ubisoft and you're like, actually, no, this had nothing to do with Ruth, that's fine. But honestly, if this was a little homage to Ruth, if y'all were like, yeah, keep in mind, this is the knight from the original trailer, okay? And you're taking the knight from the original trailer and making her lore an homage to Ruth, that would be, I might cry. I might actually cry if that was the case. I'm not saying that's the case, but that would be so cool if it was. What do you guys think? Do you think that Ruth and the Unsung Knight have a lot in common, some suspiciously amount of stuff in common? Just let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But more than that, leaving aside my own fan theories now, leaving aside my own little connection between Ruth and the Unsung Knight, what do you guys think of the Unsung Knight? Do you like her? I personally like her. Not just her design, but her overall lore I think is pretty good. Again, it just needs to be completed. And you know what I might do? I might do you a solid, Ubisoft. I might do a little favor for you. I may write myself the follow-up. I may write down how the Unsung Knight meets the samurai and Viking that invade Ashfeld. I may write that encounter myself because I would be very interested to kind of build that up based on what you've given. I'll do my best for you, okay? I always give my best when it comes to my story writing, but that's something that I may be willing to do for you guys. And you know what? I'll do it for fun. I'll do it for fun, okay? So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Had a great time reading the lore and looking over all this. I'm really enjoying the new season so far. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. Would love to hear from you. And as always, guys, I will see you in my next video. Take care.